Hello everyone, I am back today with another video. This is going to be an after-the-fact commentary on my Round 4 game from the 2024 North American Championships. This is going to follow my Round 3 game, which is the last video uploaded on my channel that was against Ollie, which is a game I did not win. So going into this round, I had 2 wins and 1 loss. My Round 4 game here was against TheSweetieMan. But my Round 5 game against Winner was what was looming large in terms of my potential progression out of the group stage. So this game here was one that I absolutely had to win to even give myself a chance to move past the group stage, likely finishing behind Ollie by virtue of losing to him, and therefore probably needing to beat Winner in Round 5 if I was going to progress to the knockout stage. But at any rate, we'll go ahead and get started with this game. This again was my Round 4 game against TheSweetieMan. He was 1 win and 2 losses going into this stage of the tournament. And I looked at his profile before the game, and I'd never played him before, but he was kind of hovered around like 200 or 300 elo. So a decent gap between his ranking and mine. So I figured I would opt for a pretty basic setup. There's nothing really tricky about this. All my pieces are probably where they're places where I could use them when I need them. They'll be accessible. Again, there's nothing shocking about this setup. It's just kind of a setup where if I play fundamentally, then I should, for the most part, be able to have the upper hand against a player like this. So that was kind of the mindset that I had going into this game. I decided to go ahead and start on the right side. Go ahead and use that kernel that you can see there on the flank early on if I wanted to. I discovered a sergeant here, and so my immediate plan, after kind of bolstering the center a little bit, I did want to kind of allow movement at least between the center and the right side. But I figured I would go ahead and kind of bluff that sergeant as backup and hit that sergeant with my captain, but he ended up trading sergeants. So I didn't really end up getting to do that. So kind of just pursued with that captain, still as of yet unknown, and decided, well, I still got some scouts in the center, so I'll go ahead and use those and see what I figure out. He's pretty much focusing completely on the left side, and I'm happy to let him attack that. I feel pretty good about my defensive setup there. But I discovered, I believe, a sergeant here in the center, and I figured I would go ahead and just hit this piece with my captain, kind of just dive in. And getting a lieutenant is good, but finding a major is not quite as good. To be right behind that lieutenant, take my captain out. So I do end up being down that captain, up a lieutenant. That's an exchange I'm fine with. Pretty early stages of this game. At this point, I wasn't exactly sure what to do. I feel like I hadn't really discovered anything, or I didn't have any pieces in the right positions that would that would kind of enable me to take any good opportunities in this game. But he goes and scouts that captain. At this point, I pull back. I do want to avoid going down 2 captains if I can help it. So I moved that sergeant over just to figure out what that piece was and not allow him like free access to my captain. We ended up trading that. And then over here, just another example of that. I feel like he's getting the better of our exchanges. Kind of getting a sergeant before trading here, and then having that colonel over there where I can't recapture. I mean, there's nothing, looking at the graveyard, there's nothing too different here. I'm just down a major. And I do know his colonel for that. But he has been getting the better, I feel like, at this point of a lot of our exchanges, which was a bit frustrating at this point in the game. But I had to remind myself to kind of stay patient and kind of focus on the more, I guess, long-term aspects of the game, and that the longer the game went on, the more information I had, the more likely I would be able to utilize what I would say is probably my greater experience in the game, and maybe be able to get the upper hand eventually. So I move up with that major there. I'm hoping to just get some small piece for info maybe. And he scouts me, and immediately I don't think I know what this piece is, so I move back. And he pursues me with this piece. And I wasn't sure if it was a bluff or something good. And I figured here, if this was a good piece, like let's say it's like a colonel, especially general marshal, something that my colonel would need to be concerned about, I don't think he would just hit the random piece that's sitting there on the side. And also, if it was a low piece, if it was another scout or maybe a minor or a sergeant, I figured I'd go ahead and give him maybe the choice to hit it, but I wouldn't actively move it away. But if it's a lower level piece like that, he might not hit this piece because it might just be like my lieutenant and he might die to it. But I figured then if it was something in that sort of middle range, I'd be happy for him to hit the colonel. So that's kind of how I considered this exchange here, is I sort of ended up leaving my colonel there, just kind of letting him have his way with it. In a way, almost thinking that based on what piece he had, that he would react according to what would kind of be the ideal outcome for me, because I don't think he would think this was a colonel. And he hits that with a major, and that itself right there is probably the most ideal situation that could have been. So now I'm not down a major anymore, so that's good. Now I am, at this point now, I have some exposed information. This major's known, this colonel's known. I do know his colonel here, which then kind of emboldens him to chase after my captain a bit there. So definitely glad to get that major, but I always feel more comfortable when I have the information advantage against my opponent. And right now in this game, that wasn't quite the state of things. So the good news about that, though, is that he didn't really have any pieces on this right side that would be bearing down, even though my colonel and my major are known. I wasn't really under any threat, so I wasn't too worried about the fact that they were exposed. And of course I had my marshal on that side if I really needed to use it. So again, a little bit of a risk maybe with this colonel to move next to this piece, to move next to my captain, and then a bigger risk there to kind of just put his colonel right against it with no backup. But definitely a legitimate risk, because of course it didn't turn out being my general or my marshal. But at this point he comes around with this piece, so I figure, okay, I'd better swing my at least one of these pieces around, not have both of them just sitting here. And I figure at this point this could be something good, so I might want to scout it. And I'm also going to bring the major toward the center because I want to trade with. I want to trade in the center. I believe I knew this major of his in the center here, the one that took out my captain. But instead of trading with my known major, he just attacks that. He must have considered it to be a weak piece and maybe this to be the strong piece that backed it up. So instead of trading known majors, we trade his known major and my unknown major, which is not quite as ideal. But it's okay. It kind of gets at least a piece out of the way for me. I don't want to have too much too forward in the lanes that could be exposed or attacked. So I go to move that scout over. Again, I was a little suspicious when he moved it down, when I had my colonel and my major on this side, but just a captain, so another good play by him, kind of the inverse of what I tend to do a lot to players who may be a little bit lower rated than I am, but just kind of throw bluffs at them and collect smaller pieces. But he does also forget my major there, because that was the major that I moved from the right side. He definitely knew it. He scouted it and then pursued it with his major. So kind of trading favors there, both losing scouts for probably less than we had hoped for. Although for me, I actually did discover a new piece, so that was more helpful. But he sort of rediscovers my major there. And I think at this point he knows the colonel and the major, and I know the captain, and I know his colonel. So we're pretty even. He's got a little bit upper hand on the major, but I'm feeling decent about this game. I'm actually up scouts, which was not the case at the very beginning of the game when I kind of used him a little bit quicker in my initial advantages in the center and the right side. Consider whether to scout that since it threatened my major, and I do, and it's a colonel, so that's a good find. I now know both of his colonels. Still no marshal, still no general. I feel like to this point in this game, and probably even continuing past this, I didn't really know how to effectively attack him. I don't think I ever really got a good opportunity to just mount a really effective attack in his territory. Certainly not to this point, and not for at least some time after this point in the game. But it was mainly just kind of encountering in the lanes, and even when he kind of brought pieces more toward my side of the board, that I started to kind of bring the game back to even and not be down material like I was at the very beginning. So he scouts that minor, uses his last scout. I'm pretty happy with that because, of course, there's nothing the miners, not a significant piece there. So at this point I do have a little bit of an advantage because I know both of his kernels, but I'm not really sure what to do with that information. Again, not really any legitimate attacks, I guess I would say. But I do get another miner there. Kind of that strategy of sending up bluffs or weaker pieces and picking off smaller pieces, kind of used as discovery tools by him. So I'm always happy to do that. The only problem with that is that it leaves a lot of known pieces when I retreat them after doing that. So this mage is known, this colonel's known, that lieutenant's known, this miner's known. I don't recall about that captain. I don't think it is. But just something to be mindful of. So I sort of almost offer a colonel exchange there. It chases my major back a little bit, and I say, okay, if you're going to bring your colonel into my territory, like I'll trade if you want. And he retreats with it, kind of brings it back toward the center, so I realize he doesn't want that. Come up with this known lieutenant, but then I believe this unknown captain is going to accompany it in the center here. I think that's an unknown piece, if I'm not mistaken. And that'll be kind of the piece that I ward his colonel off with here by backing up that lieutenant with it. So I figure he's probably at least respecting this captain, because if not, he could actually just move in with his colonel and get a free piece because he knows that lieutenant, he knows this miner. So he comes up with this piece here, and I figure this is probably like a lieutenant or a captain, because he knows this lieutenant. I don't think he'd come up against it with a miner or a sergeant, but I figured it's probably a lieutenant or probably a captain trying to figure out some information, either discover the marshal or general, and he's willing to give up one of those two pieces to do that, or he's just trying to trade lieutenants. Especially because his colonel didn't move next to the captain, I figured he might think this was a marshal or general, and he might kind of be scared of that or respect that. So I retreat with my lieutenant, and I hit it with my captain. I consider just moving the lieutenant away, but I hit it, and it's the general. Which, for the reasons I just mentioned, I didn't expect that. I thought it might be like a mid-level piece. So he did very well to bring that down. A very opportune time, and I guess going along with that, if that captain was in fact unknown, which I think it was, then that was a really good sort of, I guess, prediction by him that it wasn't going to be my marshal or my general. But at this point I figure, okay, general came from here, marshal I'm assuming is probably not on this side. I don't know if that was a safe assumption, but that's the assumption I made. So I hit that, I believe, moved to lieutenant, which was good to get one of those two pieces back that I lost in the center. But this is kind of the point in the game where the game really starts to get going. I've discovered his general. My colonel's now in his territory. This is the first time I'm kind of attacking him. And when he makes this move here, I guess I'll let it play because I take a little bit to decide in-game anyway. When he makes this move here, I figure, okay, this is his general. This is his captain here. And I know that. And the captain is the other piece I lost in the center. And I'm down a captain. So that actually might be the play to move down and to trap his captain. And that's exactly what I decide to do at this point in the game. I move down, I go ahead and trap his captain up against his general, and I'm banking on hopefully this being the bomb, a bomb. But if things go awry, and maybe he brings the marshal over to trap me, or maybe this is a bomb, he starts to move pieces out to, rescue the captain, because I have trapped my colonel in his territory by doing this. But if things go awry, I can always just hit the captain and sort of sack my colonel, and I just transfer being down a captain to being down a colonel. It's already my known colonel, so I don't have a problem with that. That wouldn't really be a huge change in the game situation, especially because I know both of his colonels too at this point. So I figure, okay, I'm going to move down, I'm going to trap his captain, and my hope there is that I kind of make things awkward for him, make him difficult. Maybe he'll expose his marshal by kind of bringing it over to try to trap my colonel. That might allow my general to counterattack. So that was kind of my thought process by moving that colonel down. But yeah, at this point in the game, things start to develop a little bit more. I'm kind of less just sort of aimlessly moving around, sending up one piece at a time, just trying to find information. Now I feel like I have information. I have a position. I've got the colonel in his, in his territory. Um, so at this point now, my task is to really just find his marshal. And if I can find his marshal or have a good guess on his marshal, and this miner, he seems to have forgotten it. He actually knew that miner because he scouted it earlier. But I threatened his colonel with it, and his colonel moves back. So I'm figuring marshal probably somewhere on this side. I know his colonel's over here. I don't expect his marshal to be the piece accompanying his colonel. But then he moves up again with his colonel, and I do sort of continue along with my plan to just scout this piece to find out what it is. But the fact that he moved up with his colonel here makes me think that this is probably the marshal of the spy. Because he's not taking the miner, so clearly he thinks it's a piece that can take out his colonel, maybe, so he must have forgotten it. But the fact that he moved it away and then back to be guarded by this piece makes me think this is a piece that can reasonably guard his colonel. So again, marshal or spy. So at this point, he moves in with that piece. I hit it with my miner, which was my plan. If he moved it next to, then I would, expend the miner, and I find the marshal. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So now I have what I would consider like perfect information on him. I know his general, I know his marshal, I know both of his colonels. He does know my colonel, he doesn't know my last major, and he might be able to kind of assume this to be maybe the general or the marshal. I don't think he can say that with confidence yet. But I figure at this point, okay, I'm gonna, the column or side of the board where I already have an entry point, I'm gonna continue attacking on that side. So I'm gonna bring this miner up, and it is a piece that sat behind my major for a reasonable amount of the game. I think this game has been played a few months ago by now. I think my plan here was to bluff this as the marshal. And to go up against his general and maybe try to force his general to move away. I believe that was my plan at this point in the game here. But at this point, he now that I know his marshal, he's not going to be able to trap my colonel without like letting my general in. He's got move piece, move piece, move piece. These two moved here as well. I'm not super interested in moving my general down there. I know that's a bomb, and I know he's just gonna find it out for cheap anyway. But I go ahead and move this miner over. And I'll avoid being discovered with my general. I need to keep it there, though, just to be in an attacking position if he decides he wants to trap my colonel, though. But I'm moving with this miner, and I'm planning on moving it next to his general here, and then he moves down with this piece to cover it. And that makes me think for a moment, like, maybe that's his spy? Is that what he's trying to tell me? Like, is he backing this in case this is my marshal with his spy? But then why would he move his spy next to this unknown piece in the center, unless he really thought it was my general and knew that I wasn't just going to sack my general to get a spy? But at this point, I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is a spy, if that's what he's doing. But I'm going to move over, avoid being sort of too squared by the marshal here. And I decide, okay, I'll move up with the major. Just kind of waiting out what he does here. If he's back to his general with the quote-unquote spy, or at least he seems to be acting like it. Okay, so at this point, he moves this piece up, which tells me two things. One, that tells me this isn't the spy right here, not the spy. Because if it was the spy, he would have kept this here, probably not moved it up again. And two, it also tells me he doesn't think this is my marshal, because he just left his general there for the taking, if he actually thought that. So he thinks this is a bluff, is what that's telling me. So at this point, I figure, okay, I'll probably use my miner to just sort of hit some of these pieces over here and try to find bombs or anything like that. If he doesn't believe it's the marshal, then find another purpose. But he actually takes it. So this is where the game really gets broken open. A lot of discovery, sort of a breakdown of position overall. So he takes my miner, I take the captain, and at this point I'm kind of being trapped basically between his general and his marshal. And I'm kind of realizing I don't have a great angle to really smash into too much over here. Maybe I'll get one of these two pieces down here, maybe I can get one of these two, but there's not really a cluster of pieces that I can just run into and just get a whole lot from. But that's okay because I already got his captain, so the game is completely even right now, and I was down that captain and now I'm not anymore. And I will at least get one of these pieces. So I'll be down the colonel and up at least one of these, with my general being able to move into his position here. But I go ahead and I kind of gain tempo here by threatening his colonel and moving left there. Because he has to move that away. He doesn't want to take my colonel, just let me return the favor there. But at this point, I realize there's not a whole lot of advantage to me. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot of advantage to me like moving up and drawing his marshal away from the position. My general is in position no matter what. Whether his marshal is here or here isn't going to impact what my general does. So if there's no advantage to moving up and sort of drawing his marshal further that way, which maybe I would have wanted to do if there was a cluster of pieces here and I wanted to move into them with my general. So I figure my best chance then is to obviously not just let his general take my colonel, but to lotto. And it's really successful. I get a minor, which already is a bonus if that wasn't a bomb. Because all that colonel needed to do is to take out the captain. So I find that minor there, take that out. Really, really lucky lotto. This game would have been a much more difficult position that I was in had that not been a bomb. And I figure, okay, I guess I'll go further, and I take that into lieutenant. So again, a really lucky situation for me. This colonel's done more than enough in a way, but him moving up with his marshal actually allows me to have a better chance at things with my general, because now I can approach this piece head on. But I realize at this point he's trying to cut my colonel off, so I go ahead and move over and give it one last shot. That's a bomb, but that's fine. I didn't expect to even get the minor or the lieutenant, so that was already a win. And then I get a sergeant there too. Because he moved his marshal up and wasn't guarding the colonel anymore, I could move down, force his colonel to move away, and then basically two-square that sergeant. He could have gone like up and down three pieces, but he didn't. And actually, I want to point out something kind of tricky that I did here. That kind of happened really quick. This is his colonel, and had this been my marshal, I would have not worried about this sergeant over here. I would have two-squared this colonel and trapped it and killed it and gotten the colonel back that I was going to lose over here. But my marshal was not on this side of the board. It's over here. And so, therefore, I sought after other pieces because I knew I wasn't going to be able to trap his colonel. But if he was really thinking about it, that might have clued him in on something, which might have been that because I made no effort to trap his colonel, that I couldn't trap his colonel. Because if I can trap his colonel, you better believe I'm going to trap his colonel. I know what I'm doing, for the most part, when it comes to, playing this game in general. So I sort of kind of played it off as like, oh, maybe I just like forgot to trap your colonel. But I think that's something he could have picked up on if he'd really thought about it. And what that would allow you to do is actually just to smash into these pieces, because you could have intuited that my marshal was not readily available to trap his colonel. So that could have actually allowed him to probably take a risk and like actually attack. But as it stood, I just kind of took the sergeant out and then just sort of like ran down the side, let him kind of free his colonel, and then just took a minor. So I got a lot of pieces from that exchange, which was good. I was really happy with that. So I got 4 pieces, the sergeant and the minor, as well as the lieutenant and the minor with my colonel over here before losing it. So I'm down 1 piece to up those 4. So I'm feeling really good about my situation in this game right now. And all he knows is my general and my major, but he doesn't know my colonel, doesn't know my marshal. I'm hoping my spy isn't like really obvious to him. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty confident about my situation in the game. So at that point, I move in. What I was hoping to do was maybe if he moved his colonel out of the way and was scared of it, he might let me take this piece, but instead he just traded, which was fine with me. So we go ahead and trade those colonels off. That's okay. I mean, it was my unknown colonel, but I'm fine with trading. And that didn't really make sense to me. I don't think what he did here. He kind of moved his general around to trade those off. I don't think trading really helps him out at all right now. And I go ahead and scout that because I'm like, well, what is that? It's a spy. I figured it would be either probably like the major or the spy, one of those two. So that was a good grab with my last scout there. Of course, I have to give it up to save my captain. But I think for him in this situation, trading is probably not the best thing to do. He is up that colonel, but I know the colonel. I know his marshal. And I'm up so many smaller pieces, so I think probably waiting it out rather than trading would be the play here. But he's going to move next to that spy with his colonel, and I'm just going to leave it there because I don't think it's moved. I believe I'm correct in saying that. So I'm trying to maybe kind of bluff that captain a little bit as the marshal. But I'm worrying my marshal's a little bit obvious, but maybe he thinks it's a bomb. You know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not too sure what to do. But I am advancing with this major. Just want to, I know it's a known major, but I just kind of want to see, you know, if he moves anything, if there's anything I can get from his setup by how he acts when I advance. But I move up like that, and immediately he trades with me. His unmoved piece, which is his major. And again, that really caught me off guard, because I think that trading probably isn't his best plan of action right now, but very beneficial to me, so I was happy to see that. And at this point, all I needed to do was to trade our last captains, and then I would be strictly up lieutenants, and that would be exactly what I wanted. I could, you know, just pretty much win the game, I think, from there on out by just advancing in the other lanes, as long as I can find his last captain was the goal. But I advanced with the lieutenant here. I wasn't going to like move next to any pieces, I don't think, because they could be captains, and given his trade-happy attitude here, against another player who realized that he can't afford to trade, I might have been more bold with that lieutenant because that player wouldn't just hit it with a captain, because trading would have been bad for him. But I had to be more cautious since he had already shown a willingness to trade. But at this point, I figure, okay, like this might be the captain if he's moving it, so I might want to move my captain around to sort of counter that, because I'd be happy to trade captains too, even if I've been kind of bluffing this as the marshal. But I also don't want his marshal to sort of smash into my center if I move my captain down like that, so I had to bring my spy over first, even if that makes it kind of obvious. But I move my captain over, which has also maybe been kind of bluffed as a marshal, but I'd be happy to trade it if he, you know, if he just moves next to it. So he moves over, not going to let me go after it. I thought I'm happy to just keep my lieutenant there in the corner, and then here he moves next to my marshal, and I immediately take his colonel. And so at that point, I think that erases any advantage that he had. So definitely gives me the pretty secure, I think, upper hand in this game. And then I think he says something in the chat about losing my marshal, or like, man, how did I lose your marshal? Yeah. And I wasn't sure if maybe he thought that was my marshal, or maybe he lost track of it, but I don't think it had moved the whole game. I think I was kind of playing it off as a bomb. But sometimes I feel like it's actually really obvious when I do that with my marshal, if I just sort of leave it there like a bomb, but really it's, you know, kind of obvious. Same thing with like the spy, that I didn't move the whole game, but like I felt like it was kind of obvious as a spy. But it worked out in this game, so that was good. So at this point, all I need to do is, you know, just trade marshals, find the captain. But at that point, he just says GG, and I think that pretty much marks the end of the game there. Yeah. So he goes ahead and surrenders. So pretty good win overall. Got the job done. Definitely, again, a must-win game going into my round 5 game against Winner. Pretty solid game overall. A little bit frustrating at the beginning, just like not really sure what to do in the game, but once I got info, especially as general, and I had like a point of attack on the right side, we really got the ball rolling, and it went pretty well. So I was pretty happy with this game overall. And that left one more game in the group stage for this tournament. So kind of do or die situation against Winner. That'll be my next video for round 5. But for now, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.